Hey everybody, this is Andrew again from King Gaming, and I've got another Warhammer 40k Codex review for you. And today we're going to be looking at the new Chaos Daemons Codex. And this book just came out a couple of weeks ago, and I got a chance to pick it up last week. So I've looked through it, noted some of the major differences, and that's what we're going to talk about today, is what's really changed in comparison to the previous edition of this book. So first we'll just go ahead and dive right in. And we'll get past all the fluff, which there's always a lot of fluff in these books. Always the first like 20 some pages. But first we have here are the new army-wide rules. And so what they've done in here is they're going to explain to you what the different types of demons, so like Khorne, Tzeentch, Nergal, and Slaanesh, what those do. And now what Demon of Khorne does is it gives you Furious Charge, Hatred for Demons of Slaanesh, and your Chariots resolve their Hammer of Wrath hits at Strength 7. Demon of Tzeentch gives you a +3 to your leadership when you are casting a psychic power, and you get to reroll any failed saving throws of a 1. Demon of Nurdle, in addition, Tzeentch has Hatred for Demons of Nurdle. Demons of Nurdle have Hatred for Demons of Tzeentch. They are shrouded and slow and purposeful. And units that are composed entirely of Demons of Nergal count as having defensive grenades. And then Demons of Slaanesh, they have Hatred for Demons of Khorne, they have Fleet, and they have Rending. And a unit entirely composed of Demons of Slaanesh runs an additional 3 inches, so that'd be a d6 plus 3. And units that are entirely composed of Cavalry instead run an additional 6 inches. And then vehicles that are not walkers move an extra 3 inches when they move flat out for Slaanesh. So that's how the new quote-unquote marks work for the demons. They have some of their own unique Warlord traits, all of which are actually pretty decent, especially if we compare them to the Warlord traits out of the main rulebook. So as each army gets their own Warlord traits, you'll see fewer and fewer people taking the main rulebook traits. The next thing is Demonic Instability. So if you have that rule, you automatically pass fear, pinning, and morale tests. And if you lose an assault, then you have to make a demonic instability test during the morale check step of the fight subphase. So when you make an instability test, you take a leadership test. If you roll double ones, all wounds that unit suffered during the phase are restored. So it's like your opponent didn't do anything to that unit. Any models return to play, you have to put at least an inch away from enemy models, unless you're locked in combat, and then you put them in play, and then you do a pile-in move with those guys. If you roll double sixes, then that unit is banished, and they're just removed entirely from play as casualties. And then if your opponent was in close combat when that happens, they get to immediately consolidate. Now, if you don't roll double ones or double sixes, it works just like you would imagine. For every point you fail your leadership test by, you suffer a wound with no saves of any kind allowed. So that's Demonic Instability. They put a little extra twist on it with the double ones and the double sixes, which is kind of interesting. In addition to that, you have the Warp Storm table over here. Now, the Warp Storm table has several different results on it, and at the start of each of your shooting phases, you have to roll on this table. And there's random things that can happen. Like if you roll Snake Eyes on this table, then all units with Demonic Instability, friend or foe, have to make Demonic Instability tests. But if you happen to roll like Boxcars, then you get a brand new unit of Bloodlitters, Pink Horrors, Plague Bearers, or Demonettes of your choice, and you deep strike them onto the table. And here I'm going to turn on some extra light. Here. There we go. And you get 2d6 plus 3 of them. They don't have any upgrades or anything, they're just very basic unit. But it's a free unit that you get. So that's it for like army-wide rules. They don't really have a lot. Now, also, everything is obviously considered a demon. So you use the rules for demons out of the main rulebook. Also, keep in mind, demons can only be joined or demons can only join units that are composed entirely of demons of the same alignment as themselves. So you can't put like a Herald of Tzeentch in with some Bloodletters. A Herald of Tzeentch would have to go with a unit of Tzeentch demons. So here, now we have all the same stuff before you. You've got the Bloodthirster. His stat line is pretty amazing now at weapon skill and ballistic skill 10 with initiative 9. That's because his Lash of Khorne now is a shooting attack. But with a ballistic skill of 10, it means he's going to hit on a 2+. If he misses that, then he gets to re-roll and, again, try to hit on a 2+. Bloodletters of Khorne. Let's see, we've got Blood Crushers, Flesh Hounds. These are new. The Blood Throne of Khorne and the Skull Cannon of Khorne. So the Blood Throne is a chariot. And the things that it has special are Gorefest. So when its Hammer of Wrath hits, cause one or more unsaved wounds in a single phase. You roll a d6, and on a 4+, it regenerates a whole point that it previously lost. And then Totem of Endless Bloodletting. Basically, instead of the Herald's Locus ability only, or Locus item only benefiting the unit he's in, it benefits anything within 6 inches of the chariot. And there's several different Locus that you can buy for the different heralds. So depending on what you want to do. Over here we have the Skull Cannon. And the Skull Cannon has a Skull Cannon. Now, the Skull Cannon is, let's just go ahead and look at that really quick here. Page 61. So the Skull Cannon is a 36-inch range, strength 8, AP 5, heavy 1, Dread Skulls, ignores cover, and large blast. And Dread Skulls is you place a marker next to each unit that takes one or more hits from this weapon, so not wounds but hits. And any friendly demon unit that charges a unit so marked does not suffer the initiative penalty when charging through difficult terrain. And then at the end of the assault phase, you remove those marks. So you fire your skull cannons into guys trying to hide in the woods or in any kind of cover, and then your Bloodletter units can charge in and go at initiative. Or any unit if you're mixing stuff together. So, Skull Cannon, not too bad. It actually gives Khorne some range support. And then you have your Skull Taker from the last edition. There's some stuff that's changed. He does have Eternal Warrior. I think he's the only model in this book. It seems that now each of these books is only going to have one model that's going to have Eternal Warrior. And it so happens to be the Skull Taker for this one. You've got Scarbrand. They brought him back. Both of his melee weapons are just AP2. One is Fleshbane, though, and one is Armorbane. So yeah, and he's actually initiative 10 instead of 9, like a normal Bloodthirster. I think he has an extra attack. And so yeah, the Khorne stuff I didn't really look at a whole lot. I'll just go ahead and let you guys know I've spent most of my time looking into the Tzeentch stuff in here, because that's what I really enjoy playing. Is if I play Chaos, or when I used to play Chaos, was always Tzeentch. So, and Karanak, they left him in here as well. So now we have the Lord of Change. His stat line is pretty much just all 6s, except his leadership is 9, wounds are 5, and attacks are 5. Everything else is a 6. He is a flying monstrous creature. I believe the Bloodthirster is as well. Yeah, the Bloodthirster is, but Scarbrand is not. So, Lord of Change. Now, Pink Horrors. So there's been a pretty major change in how Pink Horrors work. Pink Horrors now have the Brotherhood of Sorcerers rule. So they're a Mastery Level 1 Psyker. The whole unit is. So they'll generate 1 Warp Charge and they get 1 Psychic Power. Now, the more of them that are in the unit, the bigger the unit, the more Warp Charges they generate. And if there's 11 through 15 of them, they'll generate 2 Warp Charges. And if there's 16 through 20 of them, they'll generate 3 Warp Charges. And at first when you look at that, you're like, oh, you think, well, they only get 1 power, so why do they need extra Warp Charges? Well, if we go to the psychic powers, and we look at the Primaris power for Discipline of Change, which is the Tzeentch one. It's the Flickering Fire of Tzeentch, and you can spend 1 to 3 warp charges on it. If you spend just 1 warp charge, then you cast it as normal, which is 24-inch range, Strength 5, AP 4, Assault 2d6, Soul Blaze, and then there's a new special rule on a lot of this Tzeentch stuff called Warp Flame, where there's a chance it can force your opponent to take additional toughness take a toughness test to take additional wounds, or you may end up giving your opponent's unit a 6+ feel no pain for the rest of the game. And the reasoning down here is just chaos is fickle. So, but if you spend a second warp charge, you get an additional d6 on the number of shots, and if you spend a third warp charge, you get another d6. So if you take a 20-man unit of pink horrors and they generate 3 warp charges, that you generate your psychic power for them, and you're almost always, in my opinion, going to trade it out for the Primaris power. And you spend all 3 warp charges, they're now going to do a 4d6 Strength 5 AP 4 shooting attack with that psychic power. And their leadership goes up to 10 for casting the psychic power, even though on their stat line it's only 7, because they're a Demon of Tzeentch. In addition to that, they also have a blue horror rule now, where at the end of the initiative 1 step of close combat, whenever a pink horror is destroyed or is slain in close combat, you put a counter next to its unit. And then at the end of the initiative 1 step, for each of those counters, one enemy unit that was locked in combat takes a Strength 2 AP-hit for every counter next to the pink horror unit. So that's to represent from back in previous editions when pink horrors would die, they'd turn into 2 blue horrors. Instead now, and so you had to actually have the models and put the models into the unit. Well, now they just represent it as putting tokens next to the unit. And it's like, so you kill the pink horror, these blue horrors pop out, hit some stuff, and then they disappear. So pink horrors are, I think, are definitely a lot better, a lot more feasible as a unit to take than in previous editions, from what I've seen. So I'm pretty stoked about these changes to the pink horrors. So then you have Flamers of Tzeentch, the Burning Chariots of Tzeentch. Yeah, everything pretty much now has a chariot of some type. And what its thing is, so like the Corn one regenerated hull points, this one, the Hammer of Wrath attacks have that Warp Flame rule, so there's a chance they cause additional wounds, or they give your opponent 6+ feel no pain. So again, kind of interesting with that. You can also upgrade it to have a blue horror crew, and then any enemy units within 6 inches of it have -1 to their penalty to their leadership. So we've got Screamers, and they still do their flyover attacks. I apologize. Apparently there's a train rolling through now, so hopefully it doesn't get too loud. Karos Fateweaver had some pretty major changes done to him. He no longer allows invulnerable save rerolls for demons that are near him, or for anything that's near him. He is the only model in the army now, though, that has a 4+ invulnerable save instead of a 5+, like normal demons. And then his 2 heads work pretty similar. Each one is a Master Level 4 Psyker. Each one knows the entire lore of change, or the discipline of change. And then one head will know 1 random power from Pyromancy and 1 random power from Divination. The other head will know a power from Telepathy and a power from Biomancy. And each turn you have to say which head is going to be using the psychic powers for the turn. And then he carries Staff of Tomorrow, which allows you to reroll a single d6 of your choice once per turn. So it doesn't have to be a d6 from anything he does even. It can be just any single d6 you can reroll. In addition, the Warlord trait that he comes with allows him to reroll on the Warp Storm table. So Karos Fateweaver, I mean, he's like 305 points, or 300 points even. I'm not sure if he's as useful as he used to be. He no longer has a chance to run off the table if he gets wounded, though, which is a lot better. You know, your opponent just does 1 wound, and boom, there goes your 300-point model. he'll stick around and they have to actually kill him. Although if they get in close combat with him, just like before, his close combat stats are really pretty bad. It doesn't get much worse. Weapon skill 1, initiative 2, and a 1 attack. So you definitely want to keep him back and just hurling psychic powers. Blue scribes. Now I do have a problem with blue scribes, and it's not with their rules, it's with army composition. Let me go over their rules first. So spell Siphon is when an enemy psyker manifests a psychic power successfully, he gets a token. And then at the start of each of your turns, you roll a d6 for each of those tokens. And on a 6, then a friendly psyker within 12 inches of him gets an extra warp charge. And then you remove all the tokens from the blue scribes. And then his scrolls of sorcery kind of work the same way they always have, where you choose a psychic discipline from the main rule book, roll a d6, and that spell goes off. Or that psychic power, I'm sorry, just goes off. He doesn't make a psychic test or anything. Your opponent can still try to deny the witch with it, but yeah, and they're actually not considered psychers for the purposes of anything that target psychers. Now, the reason I have a problem with what they've done with the blue scribes is now what you can do is if you take a greater demon, whether it's a generic Lord of Change or a generic Bloodthirster or Great Unclean One, Keeper of Secrets, or you take one of the special character greater demons, Fate Weaver, Kurgath, and Scarbrand, that allows you to then take your Demon Princes, which are normally HQ choices, as heavy supports, if you mark them to match the greater demon. So, Lord of Change means you have to mark your Demon Princes with Mark of Tzeentch, and then they become a heavy support choice instead of an HQ. Heralds, now, and there is a table or a little chart, and we'll go there really quick. And it shows you up here, these 8 options count towards the Heralds of Chaos. And you can take up to 4 Heralds of Chaos as 1 HQ choice in any combination. And the Blue Scribes is not on that list. So if you take the Blue Scribes in your army as one of your 2 HQ choices, then you either get your 4 Heralds, which means now you don't get your Demon Princes because they're an HQ choice still. Or you can take the Blue Scribes and your Lord of Change. Now you can take Demon Princes as heavies, but you don't get any Heralds. And Heralds are where you get the Locus abilities, and Heralds are the guys you really want to be sticking into your other units to beef up those units. So what I think the best use will be for the Blue Scribes is in a as an ally detachment. If you ally demons with Chaos Marines, and then yeah, maybe you take the Blue Scribes as your HQ for that, and keep them near like some Thousand Suns units with the Aspiring Sorcerers to give them additional warp charges. So, yeah, that's where my disappointment lies with the Blue Scribes. So, again, they're not bad stats-wise, rules-wise, but as far as army building goes, it's hard to justify taking them in an all-Tzeentch army. So, just keep that in mind. If you like the Blue Scribes, then maybe you just use them for an ally force. And then you have the Changeling. The Changeling is pretty much the same as he was before. He does count as a Herald, so he can be one of the 4 that you take for 1 HQ choice. And he has that Formless Horror where he can increase his stats to match the stats of a non-vehicle enemy model in base contact with him. And he can change any or all of his stats. Or he can change his weapon skill, strength, toughness, initiative, and attacks. So, that can kind of make your opponent think twice about sending a pretty awesome melee guy into combat with him. Now, he doesn't switch the stats, so you don't trade weapon skills. He just increases his to match the opponent's. So yeah, it's the Changeling. And he's also a Psyker at Mastery Level 1. So here we get into Nergal. So Nergal, they have the same stuff as before. You've got Great Unclean Ones, Plague Bearers, the Beasts. Now this unit here, though, is new, the Plague Drones of Nergal. And these are basically like big, huge, bloated fly, like wasp type things. They're considered jetpack cavalry, and they're toughness 5 with 3 wounds apiece. So they're actually pretty good as far as stats and rules go. The models for them are okay. I think they've got a picture of the models in here, or they should, and these are them right here. These big fly-like things. So those are the plague drones. But yeah, they don't have any actual rules that are unique to them. It's just a combination of different things, being toughness 5 with 3 wounds and 3 attacks apiece, and then being like jetpack cavalry. So we got Nurglings. And here's Kugath, the Plague Father. He still has that thing where he shoots like Nurglings basically at your opponent. It's a 24-inch range, AP3, heavy 1 large blast. It has no strength, but it's a 4+ poison. So there you go for that guy. Now Epidemius. So Epidemius has had a pretty major change to him. His tally ability works a lot differently, and actually it's not as good as it used to be. So you keep track of all unsaved wounds caused by psychic powers, shooting, and close combat attacks of Demons of Nergal, friend or foe. So Death Guard, like Nergal Marines, they don't count. It has to be Demons of Nergal, and you keep track of those. And it's even wounds that are negated by other things than a saving throw, like Feel No Pain. Feel No Pain isn't actually considered a saving throw, apparently. So if your opponent suffers wounds and then ignores the wounds with Feel No Pain, he still counts those towards the tally. But his tally abilities now only affect Demons of Nurgle within 6 inches of him, instead of all of your Demons of Nurgle like it was previously. Now he is on a pretty big base. I think he's on a 40, maybe a 50 millimeter base. So that 6 inches out, it turns into like a 14-inch circle around him. So it can still affect a pretty big chunk of your guys if you keep them nearby. It's just a little more restrictive than it was before. But it still gives some of the same effects. So you get like a bonus to strength, toughness, poison 2+, and 4+ Feel No Pain. But he is not a psyker. But he is one of the heralds that count on the table. So again, you can take him plus 3 other heralds as 1 HQ. So we go into Slaanesh, Keeper of Secrets. Now the Keeper of Secrets has preferred enemy Eldar and Dark Eldar, and is a Master Level 1 Psyker. So that makes sense when you consider the backstory of the Eldar creating Slaanesh, basically. So you have your Demonettes. Stats aren't that much different than before. I think they might be like exactly the same. Seekers of Slaanesh, so those are the Demonettes riding on the whatever those things are. I can't remember what they're called, but the Demonette cavalry with like the long tongue and all that stuff. The Seeker Chariot is really just a chariot. It's got, I think, multiple crew members on it. No, it's got just one. But, yeah, it doesn't really do anything. Oh, it has Flesh Shredder. And Flesh Shredder is over here. So the Hammer of Wrath hits are resolved at Strength 4 with no AP with Rending. And then this model, when they charge, they inflict a D6 Hammer of Wrath attacks for each hull point remaining rather than the usual amount. So this chariot here has, the Seeker Chariot has 2 hull points, but an Exalted Seeker Chariot has 4. So if it has all 4 and it hits an enemy unit, that's going to cause 4d6 Strength 4 Rending impact hits, or Hammer of Wrath hits. So I can do some pretty major damage before the Allurus actually gets to attack. Now the Hellflayer of Slaanesh has also an ability called Soul Scent, where when a model with this special rule makes close combat attacks, they gain a number of bonus attacks equal to the number of unsaved wounds inflicted by the Hellflayer's Hammer of Wrath this turn. So, yeah, now the Hellflayer trait, though, keep in mind, only has 2 hull points. So it's still, if it gets to combat, odds are it's going to have, well, it's got to have at least 1, but most of the time what I would say is if your opponent really wants it dead, they're just going to make sure they knock both the hull points off of it before it gets to them. But if it gets there and it has both left, you'll do the 2d6 Hammer of Wrath hits, and then for every unsaved wound you caused with that, then the Allurus gets that many additional close combat attacks. So that's pretty cool. The model is a bit much, if you haven't seen it already. I think we passed it earlier. It is, I believe it's, you use this model because it lists this as just a normal Seeker Chariot, and this is an Exalted Seeker Chariot. So I don't think it has its own particular model. The Hellflayer, actually, with only 2 hull points, it's probably going to be the smaller one down here. So let's see, what else do we have for Slaanesh? You have the mask. So she has her little, like, her dances still, where she targets, and she has to do it every turn. Targets an enemy unit within 12 inches. And then just your generic Demon Princes. And you can give Demon Princes Demonic Flight now, so they count as a flying monstrous creature. And you have Chaos Furies. And then the Soul Grinder. Now, the Soul Grinder actually, I think, is pretty good, because that Harvester Cannon that he has, which is right over here, has 2 different firing modes. And one is a solid shell, which is Strength 7, AP 4, Heavy 3. And the other is a flak shell, which is Strength 7, AP 4, Heavy 3, Skyfire. So he actually has the benefit where he can shoot at flyers without the penalty, or he can shoot at ground units without the penalty. Since most stuff with Skyfire, if it tries to shoot at something that's not a flyer, has a penalty, or if you don't have Skyfire and try to shoot at flyers, you have a penalty. So he's very multi-purposed. And then he has Ignore, Shaken, and Stun on a 2+. Now, this section of the book where they go into the new, like, war gear and stuff isn't nearly as large as the last 2 books have been. There aren't a whole lot of options, actually. The biggest thing is when you buy war gear now for your HQs, you actually buy them rewards. And you can buy them lesser rewards for 10 points, greater rewards for 20 points, and exalted rewards for 30 points. You can buy multiples, but no one gets enough points to buy 2 exalted rewards. So most of your greater demons have 50 points to spend, so you could buy 2 greaters and a lesser. Or you could buy exalted and 2 lessers, or an exalted and a greater, or just 1 exalted. And then once you buy those, at the same time you determine your warlord traits, each of those characters rolls on these tables. Now, there is a 0 option on here, so you can default or reduce your roll traded in for the 0 on that table. And each of the 0s is a different type of weapon. And the weapons are back here. And there are generic weapons, which are like the Ether Blades. Or, depending on what type of demon they are, they can go for one of the weapons of their mark. And then the Exalted table can allow you to get a Hellforged artifact. And the artifacts, you can only have 1 copy of each artifact in the army. So these down here, these are the different loci. These are the things you'll buy for your heralds. There's lesser, greater, and exalted. There's no rules against copying. Like in exalted, you can have multiples of the same exalted locus in your army. So that you have that, and then you have the three different disciplines, for Tzeentch, Nergal, and Slaanesh. Yeah, that's everything as far as like new special rules go. Army construction, as I mentioned, the only real thing that kind of mixes it up is taking the greater demons, which then allow you to take your demon princes as heavy supports instead of HQs, and the way heralds work, where you can take up to 4 heralds for 1 HQ choice, as long as they are on this list. And I think the only one that's not up here, now that I look at it, is there's 2. The blue scribes aren't on here, and the mask for Slaanesh is not on here either. So that's going to, I think, really restrict their use in a full demon army. So yeah, now there's been some point changes, of course, throughout the book. I won't go into details on that. That's pretty much everything. And then, like they've been doing in the past, they put the reference thing in the back, and then the fold-out reference thing with all the psychic powers and demonic rewards and such back here. There you have the Chaos Demon book. I actually think it's really good. I think everything in here seems pretty viable. Again, Blue Scribe's mask might be a challenge to fit into a full demon army, but I think they more so have a use as an attachment or for allies, or a detachment. So my official opinion on this is it's a good book. I think it'd be a very fun army to play, especially if you're playing Tzeentch with all that Warp Flame stuff, possibly giving your opponent the Feel No Pain. That's just kind of the risk you take for having all of that additional firepower that Tzeentch gives you. Slaanesh doesn't look incredibly strong, but that's my opinion. Never been a huge fan of the Slaanesh stuff. So yeah, if you're interested in the demons, then definitely give this book a look through. If you have any additional questions about anything out of here, such as like actual point values or anything clarifying on what the different locuses do, different gifts do, feel free to leave a comment on the video, or send me a message, and I will get back to you on that as soon as possible. And thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.